Tonight, one of the Massachusetts police officers shot by the Boston Marathon bombers, the other officer died, is responding to Senator Bernie Sanders after the 2020 candidate said all felons, including convicted terrorists like the Boston Marathon bomber, should have the right to vote. The officer, Dick Donahue, says this: "It would be nice to talk to Bernie Sanders in person since he'll be in my home state. We can talk about his comments from last night and more. I don't live too far from Cambridge." All right, let's bring in tonight's Power Panel civil rights attorney Robert Patillo, fellow and deputy director of legal policy at the Manhattan Institute, Rafael Manguel, and RNC committee woman for California, Harmeet Dhillon. Welcome to all of you.
Hi, Shannon.
Thanks so much. Hey, Shannon.
Okay, Rafael, I'll start with this. Bernie Sanders also had another tweet out that he said essentially taking away voting rights for felons is a racist form of voter suppression. Your response?
Yeah, I mean, the only way that you can characterize this as racist is if you use a baseline of the black population in terms of the whole, right? The reality is, the sad and harsh reality of crime in America is that it's both geographically and demographically concentrated. And unfortunately, black men commit a lot of the serious crime for which most people are incarcerated, right? I mean, black men nationally make up only about 7% of the nation's population, but commit well over 40% of the nation's murder. When you consider the fact that most people in prison are in for serious violent offenses, that explains the overrepresentation of blacks in that system, and not being able to vote is just a consequence of those serious crimes.
Robert, you've been working in the legal system for decades. What do you say?
Well, let's understand from a constitutional perspective, the entire felony disenfranchisement comes from Section 2 of the 14th Amendment, which says individuals who participated in a rebellion or other crimes. So the drafters of this amendment meant for it to apply to individuals who participated in the Civil War on the part of the Confederacy or assisted people who fought in the Civil War on the part of the Confederacy. This is a mistake in statutory interpretation that has been used for 153 years as part of a Jim Crow system to suppress the votes of African Americans. Bernie Sanders should have done a way better job of explaining exactly what he's meant. I'm not a Sanders supporter, but he is constitutionally correct. If you believe in the Constitution, you know that the right to vote is inalienable to all the other rights in the Constitution, and therefore, based upon that, he is correct in his assertion that we should restore voting rights to individuals who have been convicted of felonies.
Okay, well, Harmeet, a piece in the New York Times by Jamel Bowie says this: as it stands, incarcerated people retain a variety of rights, freedom of worship. They can exercise some free speech rights, like writing for newspapers, magazines, and other publications. If anything, the political system needs the perspectives of prisoners. What do you make of that opinion piece, Harmeet?
Well, I think the perspectives of prisoners are already being well represented by the Democrats who are running for president right now. I think they do a really good job of representing that wing of our society. That said, I think most sensible Americans, including many Democrats I've spoken to about this, believe that it is fair that when you are serving time for a crime for which you have been duly convicted, you lose many of your rights. Not all of your rights, but many of your rights. And they can be restored according to different legal regimes in our country and different policy prescriptions based on having served your time and being out. I personally don't believe that felons should permanently lose the right to vote, but definitely when they're incarcerated, and if you're a lifer, like the Boston Marathon bombers, or even somebody on death row, you should lose that right permanently. That's totally fair, and I don't really understand who Bernie thinks he's pandering to here with this policy issue. And by the way, I really disrespect Kamala Harris for not taking a position on it. We should have that conversation. That was her response to this. No, what is your conclusion about it? It's not that hard.
All right, well, another conversation we're going to have is about this idea that Senator Warren has of forgiving all student loans, or at least a massive swath of them. Here is Rush Limbaugh's take on that. He says basically it's pandering to the millennial vote.
Are people who paid their student debts going to be penalized for financial planning, or will they get reparations? Well, I mean, they're a legitimate question. Hey, I paid my student debt off. Now you're giving it away for everybody else. What about me? You're going to give me my money back? You're going to give me a refund?
I want to get to all of your reaction to that idea quickly. Rafael, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've got tons of law school loans that I'm still paying down, and I take pride in the fact that I'm able to pay those. There's certainly a big problem with student loans in this country, but I don't think Senator Warren's approach is best.
Robert, what do you think? Should others pay for those decisions?
Well, for once, I agree with Rush Limbaugh on this, because fundamentally what Senator Warren is suggesting is that the taxpayers support people like Lori Loughlin and Aunt Becky's children who take out student loans, go to college, get degrees to do not pay any money, and therefore the rest of us have to pay them all. This is a giveaway to millennials who have had their parents and family and society pay for their bad decisions for their entire life. Let's reward people who made the hard choices, became entrepreneurs, paid back their student loans, started families, did the right thing instead of rewarding people for doing the wrong thing.
All right, Robert, I'm putting this down. Robert agrees with Rush Limbaugh. What's the date today?
Yeah, let's
April
put that
23rd.
down.
I'm going to
I'll
write
call
that
Rush.
down. Harmeet, your take on this?
Well, I think the problem is that there is a huge scandal in the lack of worth and this whole cost of education issue. But I think Elizabeth Warren is looking at the wrong side of this. The problem is colleges are selling garbage. That is why people are not able to pay back their loans, because their degrees are often worthless and they are really being sold a bill of goods. So I think that is really the problem. And we need to actually allow this debt to be forgivable in bankruptcy. That would actually make lenders a lot more careful about whether they are lending money to people who can afford to pay it back one day. And I think colleges should have some risk, and they should have to forgive the debt if the person can't get a job with a garbage degree that the college is peddling. So I think that's really the problem.
Well, luckily, we're all gainfully employed at this moment. Harmeet, Raphael, and Robert, thank you all for weighing in. Great to see you.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thank you.
Okay, the Jussie Smollett case takes another strange